All right, welcome back. In this segment, we're going to talk about missing premises. Let's look at an example. Here we have two logic templates. This example illustrates a line of reasoning with one missing premise. Using this incomplete structure requires that the unstated premise is obvious to the audience. So here's how the audience is perceiving this argument. Premise number one, the president has a valid Hawaiian birth certificate. Now you notice this is blank here, which means there actually is no stated, explicit premise number two. So it goes from premise number one right to the conclusion. The president was born in Hawaii. Well, if this is not, even though unstated, if it's not obvious what premise number two is, the audience can move along this first premise, but when they get to this point, if they are not at least intuitively aware of what the second premise is, they won't see the connection, and the line of reasoning won't be complete in the eyes of the audience. But the student, or the person creating the argument, in their eyes, premise number one is the president has a valid Hawaiian birth certificate. And in their thinking, even though they're not explicitly stating it, to them it's obvious that there is a second premise. Anyone who has a valid Hawaiian birth certificate was born in Hawaii. Therefore, the president was born in Hawaii. So in their mind's eye, at least, the student here perceives that this second premise is explicit and obvious. But when you're trying to lead people along a line of reasoning, you can't always count on them reading your mind and knowing what each of the premises are that are obvious. So if you want to be really clear with your logic, include all the premises that are needed to make the connection complete. Now we're going to talk for a moment here about a stepping stone template. This is where the linkages, where the missing premises between each of these are not stated. And instead, the connection is through inference steps. So here, it's easier probably to explain through an example. Here we have 5 sentences. The president has a valid Hawaiian birth certificate, according to Director Fukino. So the president has a valid Hawaiian birth certificate. So the president was born in Hawaii. So the president is a natural-born U.S. citizen. So the president satisfies Section 1 of Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. So in this format, which is not uncommon, although because there's missing premises, the logic may not always be clear, it can function. Here, the premises that are missing are anyone who has a Hawaiian birth certificate, according to Director Fukino, has a valid Hawaiian birth certificate. So that's not really stated here that would lead to this conclusion. Same thing here. The premise, anyone who has a Hawaiian birth certificate was born in Hawaii, is not stated right here. That would lead to number 3. And that continues. So this is one way you often can see missing premises in reasoning. And here, of course, the connections aren't being made, as you see down here, but it's the inference steps that are made through the implication that exists of the individual premises. Thank you.